Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our Empathy Circles What, Why, and How meeting workshop. And we're going to share our screen here. And we're going to be talking about, this is our first workshop here for how to take part in an empathy circle, be an empathy circle facilitator. And we want to invite our viewers to take part in empathy circles as well for bridging social and political divides. And you can also become a empathy circle facilitator, which is what this group is about. And if you'd like to take part, you can go to www.empathycircle.com. And that'll give you the instructions on how to participate or to be a facilitator, empathy circle facilitator. So with that, we want to go into our group here. We each wrote about our on arrival question which was why are you interested in being an empathy circle facilitator? So we're going to go with our group here and each share a little bit about why we'd like to be a facilitator. And we're back, and let's see. Ingrid, would you like to start?
I guess the main reason I like to be a facilitator is because no one's doing it here in Boise, and it's to try to start something here, and because I want more people to talk to about it too. And so if I can get the facilitation skills, then it'll be easier for me to start. I mean, there's they have a big music thing here, kind of like South by Southwest, and all those bands come up here. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be neat to do an empathy tent there? And anyway, I probably could do it, and it's kind of late, but anyway, so it's to help. I kind of don't like spread the word, but because it has some religious context to it. But anyway, so that's why I want to be one.
Okay, thanks. Jessica, like to share?
Sure. I like what Ingrid said about spreading, about sharing empathy with everybody. And I always wanted to be a facilitator, so being an empathy facilitator sounds really cool.
Coolness factor.
No, I do think it's important work, and I do think by being a facilitator, I'm hoping that I will help make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll go next, and for me, it's two things. Is one, to spread the practice. So I really see empathy circles as a very effective gateway practice to bridging social and political divides, as well as for fostering deeper connection. So I'm excited about spreading it as far and wide as we can. And so part of that is actually having other people learn to be facilitators so they can facilitate and spread it. But the other is to have a group to be able to grow and learn together with, because I really get a lot out of like the sharing that we have here, like in our groups, sharing our insights, because I really learn a lot from that, as well as have that personal support. So Nancy, would you like to share, why are you interested in being an empathy circle facilitator?
Sure. I think first and foremost, I really like the function and purpose of just facilitation in and of itself. Whether you're facilitating a meeting and or facilitating a group discussion, because it's important in terms of making sure that a lot of people get to participate, not just one or two very vocal people. So they allow for and ensure opportunities for individuals involved in the group to be able to have an opportunity to speak and talk about whatever the topic is. And so, kind of balancing the discussion allowing people to talk who may not otherwise be able to kind of butt in. I think that's important. So just basic facilitation is one thing I'm always very interested in. And so then taking it sort of to the next level and using it for such a thing as empathy, I think is intriguing and challenging and exciting. It's just a slightly different purpose and way to use a very basic fundamental skill. And so, if you can bring people together and allow everybody opportunities to talk about what's important and what their thoughts and perspectives are, I think that's really, really valuable.
Okay, Mimi, why you would like to become a facilitator, Empathy Circle facilitator?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, technology. Sorry for being late. I've told you that I'm having classes, so that's why I might be sometimes late. Okay, so why? Of course, I'm very much interested in empathy, and I think that I can just help people learn a better way to deal with their differences and just build bridges. And as a language teacher, I also noticed that I can use it in my classes. And instead of giving my students a chance for some boring speaking, I can just teach them a life skill. So I can have a double benefit. They can just practice a second language, and at the same time, they can learn how to deal with their differences in their real life in a more constructive, more creative way. And I liked it very much. So as a teacher, it helps me step back, introduce a new way of communication. Then I can step back and let the participants, let my students exchange their views. So I can be a language facilitator, an empathy facilitator, and that's very, I really fancy the idea. So I can have also the social, they can have a social benefit, except for the language benefit, the benefit of practicing the second language, I mean.
Okay, great, thanks. So I think we're ready to go into Ingrid, your part. Should I share is that right? Or
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Should I share the screen? So we create this slideshow and we're kind of testing this out. So let's see, here we go.
Okay, so today is really, there are four training sessions to be a facilitator. And this one today is the very first one. It's like the introductory one. And then the next one is more about the speaker, and then the reflective listener, and then more about the organizer and facilitator's role. So we can go to the next slide, Edwin. So today what we're going to do is we're going to first start with talking about what is empathy. And then we're going to go into more into empathy circles. What are they? Why participate? How do they work? And then after that, we're going to go into our normal, what we're used to, our empathic listening rounds, where we use the structured process. So that's kind of gives you an idea of what to expect. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to listen. Carl Rogers' definition of empathy is really the basis for empathy circles. And we also build off of his definition. And the definition of empathy is very controversial. No one agrees on it. There was even a book out called The Case Against Empathy, and both Edwin and I read it, and we were kind of like, what's this book about? And then once we started reading it, we realized, well, he just defines empathy different than what we do. And so there's a lot of different definitions of empathy, and we just want facilitators to know that it's Carl Rogers' definition that's the basis of how we build empathy circles. And we'll talk more about Carl Rogers. We're going to watch his video. It's a 3-minute video where he talks about it. And then we're going to see a quote of his. But another reason why I want to really spend some time about the definition of empathy is because as a facilitator, you're going to get questions about it and from participants, and you're going to need to know how to answer those questions. And this discussion that we have, we'll show the video and talk, and in a little bit talk about it. It will help you be able to be prepared to answer those questions. So you can go ahead and show it.
Okay. Is that showing up?
Yep. Hasn't started yet.
No, not yet.
Okay. I can see it.
Okay, great.
So with that conceptual background, I'd like to attempt a description of empathy which would seem satisfactory to me today. I would no longer be terming it a state of empathy, which was in my earlier definition, because I believe it to be a process rather than a state, and perhaps I can capture that quality. The way of being with another person, which is termed empathic, has several facets. It means entering the private perceptual world of the other and becoming thoroughly at home in it. It involves being sensitive moment to moment to the changing felt meanings which flow in this other person, to the fear or rage or tenderness or confusion or whatever that he or she is experiencing. It means temporarily living in his life, moving about in it delicately, without making judgments, sensing meanings of which he is scarcely aware, but not trying to uncover feelings of which he is totally unaware, since this would be too threatening. It includes communicating your sensings of his world as you look with fresh and unfrightened eyes at elements of which he is fearful. It means frequently checking with him as to the accuracy of your sensings and being guided by his responses. You are a confident companion to him in his world. By pointing to the possible meanings in the flow of his or her experiencing, you help him to focus on this useful type of referent, to experience his meanings more fully and to move forward in his or her experiencing. Now, to be with another in this way means that for the time being, you lay aside the views and values that you hold for yourself in order to enter his world without prejudice. In some sense, it means that you lay aside yourself, and this can only be done by a person who is secure enough in himself that he knows he will not get lost in what may turn out to be the strange or bizarre world of the other, and can comfortably return to his own world when he wishes. Perhaps that description makes clear that being empathic is a complex, demanding, strong, yet subtle and gentle way of being.
So keep that video in mind, and now we're going to look at, Edwin, if you could show the slide. These are words, so instead of listening to him now, we're just going to read something on the screen that's very, so everyone just go ahead and just take a minute yourself to read this quote of Carl Rogers. Okay, let's, I think everyone hopefully has had time to look at that. And then now, Edwin's going to talk, we're still on the definition of empathy, and Edwin's going to share something with you, and then we're going to have a little discussion about the definition. So go ahead, Edwin.
Okay, so we had the introduction of what empathy was from Carl Rogers, and he's saying that following with someone. So it's empathy in that sense is feeling into someone's experience. And we just wanted to share kind of look at how that might be different from some other experiences. So we want to compare it to apathy. And apathy is feeling uninterested, indifferent, or disconnected. So that's just to kind of create a bit of a contrast. And instead of being with someone, you're just not interested in who they are and feeling indifferent. There's also identification, and that is saying, someone tells a story, said, oh, I feel really, upset about something. And then you say, well, your feeling reminds me of my feeling. I remember when I was upset. And you start talking about your feeling upset. So instead of being with the other person and, feeling into their experience or feeling along with their experience, you start identifying and feeling your own feelings that come up. And then there's the feeling of sympathy, which is feeling sadness or feeling bad for others in pain. So again, that's sort of a block to following somebody in their experience. You're starting to be concerned about your own feelings of sadness or distress for others' feelings of pain. And then there's the compassion, which is usually, there's a lot of different sort of meanings and definitions of compassion. And the main one is that compassion is addressed with someone who is suffering or in pain. So empathy is this broad awareness of all feelings. So you can be aware of somebody's pain, their joy, their sorrow, kind of the full spectrum of something that people, of the feelings that people have and the experience that people have. Empathy is feeling into that, being with that. Whereas compassion is generally kind of focused on pain and suffering and how we relate to that. And there's different sort of definitions, around that, but we don't want to go too deep into it. So that's a little bit, just a bit of an overview of how we're defining empathy and maybe how it contrasts to some other kind of experiences. And so with that, we want to ask, is there any questions or on the definition, or any questions, comments on the definition of empathy? Everybody's really clear on it?
What do you think of the video?
I thought the video was great, and I hadn't seen it before, and I think it was really helpful to me in finding ways to explain what empathy is. So yeah, it was excellent.
I would like to say something regarding the video. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is what Carl Rogers thought, right? And it was very cool that he mentioned this at the very beginning. This is how I see things now, and this is the definition that gives me some pleasure now. That was a very good point. As a scientist, somebody should say that, because things might change, and maybe Carl Rogers today might have changed his thought. Okay, so okay, it was okay, but I just noted 3 things that if we want to offer empathy, the profile of the person who can offer empathy is somebody who is secure enough himself. How many people are secure in themselves? And the person can comfortably return in his own world after offering empathy.
But can you say that? Will you say that again, please?
Sure. The first is that he said that the person who can offer empathy, when we want to offer empathy to each other, it means that I'm secure enough in myself to do that. Question mark. How many people feel secure in themselves? Because we're not talking about safe discussions all the time, like the one we have together. I've mentioned this many times. I'm talking about some discussions that might be a little more provocative, and some situations might be a little more edgy. And also the second I noted was that the person should be ready, after providing empathy, to comfortably return in his own world, which means that the listener can be detached from the speaker's experience and sharing of the sharing of this experience. And also, he said that this is a complex way, and I don't think that being empathetic is a complex way of being. But again, I'm not. That was just a definition. These things are dynamic. Doesn't mean that they should be static and always be like this and stick to the letter, but just take the gist. I think that being an empathetic person is something that you have it, you cultivate it, you improve it, and you are an empathetic person 24/7, or you are not, or you try to improve this skill. I think that is not a complex way. I think that it's the path of love. And also about compassion that you mentioned, I can say that I couldn't really, I don't see compassion like this. And in the Christian world, compassion is not connected to the pain of other necessarily, but compassion motivates the person to take action. And this is something I definitely love. So if Ingrid has something and I'm compassionate to her, I'm going to take action. I'm going to help her. I mean, does she need money? Does she need food? Does she need a blanket? I'm going to take action. I will not just be a listener. So this is how we see compassion in the Christian world, and I identify with this definition. And also, I'd like to share with all of you something I read. I bought a new book. It is called Empathy Exams, and there it's about an actress who tries to show empathy. She tries to pretend that she is suffering from a particular disease every time, and by doing this, she tries to empathize with people who suffer from this or the other disease. And in the book, there are different approaches of the meaning of empathy, and one of them that really got me was that sometimes people need to have not to hear the right words, but to have the reaction that will make them feel they are there. And this is what I don't remember the name of the other guy who joined us 2 weeks ago. Who was Gary?
Lewis?
I don't remember.
Lewis?
Who was the name of who was? Sorry, Louis. You said.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Louis made this point, and he said that sometimes, that was very, very good comment, that sometimes the speaker doesn't need words or many words, might need a reaction. That was so good. So while I was watching the video, I was wondering, could we just form circles of empathy where people might understand empathy in a little different way? I mean, what if I have these people who just need a little more compassionate empathy, or a little more empathy that goes deeper, and some people who just need to feel empathy in a more verbal way? Do you understand what I mean? They just want to be heard, and that's okay. But what if I have some people who say, you know what, that's not the way I understand empathy. I see like this, because we approach it from one specific angle. What about different people who see empathy in different ways?
Well, one thing, if I can just, one thing is I think what you're bringing up is it is very complex,
Mm-hmm.
All the different ramifications. And so we're trying to give kind of where we're coming from, kind of the starting point. And it can become a very in-depth, never-ending conversation in terms of definition. So it's just kind of like, this is just sort of a basic, starting point that we can sort of have in, understanding and have in common. So.
And it doesn't mean that that's what everyone has to do. It's not like everyone has to use that same, you can do whatever you want, really. But it is kind of knowing this is where we're coming from with the training.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that this is how we see it. there are other people out there who understand empathy in a different way. This is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there's different
Yes.
people have different understandings of empathy, and one thing that the academics I've talked to have said is there's different definitions, and when you start your discussion, just explain how you're using the word and stick to it, just for clarity. I think that's what we're trying to do, is just say this is what we're basing our understanding on, and other people may have different understandings of it, and then we try to just stay with this, and we can keep exploring it, but yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me like, for the purposes of training, having that common denominator is really helpful. The academics and people like us who are discussing different ideas and practicing empathy and really trying to dig deep into what it is and what it isn't and how to use it, we can have all kinds of discussions about what it is and what it isn't and how we use it. But if we're trying to facilitate a circle, we need to have some common denominator.
So I'd like to go ahead and go on so we can finish this part. Mimi, are you okay with that?
I mean, yeah, but I think that I wasn't really heard. I mean, I don't think that my point was clear. I didn't want to get into any theoretical discussion because I hate theories. I'm a very practical person. I said that Carl Rogers describes the profile of a person I don't think we can very easily find, but I can just put it aside. And on the other hand, I was wondering if just we could run different kind of circles of empathy. Once there are people who understand empathy in a different way. This is not theoretical, this is practical. And the third thing I wanted to say was that from culture to culture, how we understand empathy differs a lot. Many times participating in our meetings, I felt cold because that's not how I socialize with people. I mean, having more warmth is important for me. So, and probably it's not only for me, it's for other people. So I'm just thinking about how flexible this model could be so as to be adapted to different cultures. So I think that this is not theoretical.
So it's with Carl Rogers, you felt his definition was a little too restricted. I mean, there was only a few people who would ever be able to qualify to.
Yes, I mean, if we speak to that. Yes, right. But I tried to see the big picture. I understand that he tried to narrow it down, even though it's so broad. But I think that in practice, personally, I have to change some things so as to make people feel fully heard emotionally, but also to know that the other person has paid the necessary attention.
Okay. And that you think you want more flexibility with the definition or how empathy is defined in order to meet more needs of the people.
Yes, I'm sure, because if that was what we do was practice in Greece or in the Mediterranean world, I can tell you that people wouldn't feel fully heard. I know that. It's not the temperature people are used to.
Okay.
So ready for the slide?
Yeah. Okay. So it's I just want to go back a second to before we close off this definition of empathy. It is really it's something that you could really have a whole session on, just talking about it and kind of because people do have such different views on it. So that's not the right slide. Keep going. There we go. Okay, so now we're transitioning. We finished the definition of empathy, and now we're transitioning into, so what is it? We're going to be talking about empathy circles, because that's why you're here, is to facilitate empathy circles. And what are they? And we've written a kind of a definition, how we see it, but we want to have a little discussion about what is an empathy circle to you. So I'm kind of opening it up for whoever wants to speak about what an empathy circle is to you. Does anyone want to start? Edwin, since you kind
I'm
of
glad
created
to.
them, why don't you start?
Well, for me, the empathy circle is what Carl Rogers was talking about. He was doing listening like a therapist with the client, kind of a one direction empathic listening. And this process is used, throughout the counseling and therapeutic world. So the counselor, therapist listens to a person who's in distress or has things that they're working on in their life and just listens to them for an hour or whatever. And an empathy circle is sort of doing that in a relationship, that you not only are listed, that it's done with peers, people of equal stature, anyone who gets together and has a sense of equality to it. And it's mutual listening, like one person shares, one person speaks, and then they are heard by someone. And then when they feel heard to their satisfaction, or, the time is up, then the listener speaks, becomes a speaker and speaks to someone. So there's a sense of sort of equality in the process. So it's a structured dialogue process where each person can be heard and understood to their satisfaction. So that's kind of like sort of in a nutshell.
Okay. Who else? And another good reason, another reason why we're kind of talking about this is because you're going to get questions. You're going to get, people are going to say, what is an empathy circle? So it's going to be important for you to be able to articulate in kind of your own words. We kind of have a definition, but you don't have to use that specific definition, but just so you can articulate what it is to you.
I guess,
Okay.
I would love to hear what you have to say about it, Mimi, because I think you bring a different perspective, and sometimes I'm not, I definitely enjoy hearing that. So I guess I'm kind of curious.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for the comment. So what I do is I don't mention anything about circle of empathy. Greeks will look at me, huh? What's that? I mean, no. So I tell them, okay, you know what? Today we're gonna practice a form of constructive discussion. I mean, what if we try a new model? So it's like when we cook, the chef shouldn't say everything to the customers. I mean, I'm gonna cook something tasty for you, but let's try it. You're gonna see, then you're gonna ask me. So I don't. I just describe it as a form of constructive discussion, dialogue, and all this. And I also explain that this is a social skill, and this can be very useful for you outside the classroom or when you go back home if they are friends. So this is, and they like it, and I have noticed how difficult it is for people to be really present. But I have never used the circles of empathy or anything, because I don't think that people would be willing to try something that sounds so sophisticated. What is that? And blah, blah, blah. So weird. Okay, discussion. Okay, that's good. They join me. They like it. It's about marketing after all.
Can I reflect you on that? Would it be okay if I reflect what you're saying? Just
Sure.
okay, so what I'm hearing is you don't use the word empathy circle so much because maybe they don't understand, the people you're working with don't understand it, so you call it constructive dialogue and conversation. And then you also kind of make the case that, hey, it's good for skill. It's a real good skill to learn. And you see this as sort of marketing, something to make it sort of accessible to people.
Mm-hmm. I make them feel that this is useful, Because when it comes to language teaching and you ask people, okay, I want you to describe this. What have you seen in the video or whatever? I mean, the speaker speaks and the other sleep, which I know, of course. So in order for me to stop that, I said, you know what? Okay, so Mary, please talk to John, and John will just reflect. But I want you to take care of John. Just stop every 10, 15 seconds. So as for John to be able to reflect. So, okay, they like it, and they have to be focused, because otherwise they don't want to feel, they're gonna feel embarrassed because I'm a part of the discussion, so they don't want me to disappoint me as I'm the teacher. So you see, all this works, but this happens as part of my teaching process. I haven't really tried that. I have never invited people to join at my place, and I have a difficulty to do that because I don't think that people, I mean, I haven't found yet the right way to introduce this to my circle, to my people. I mean, it will sound a little strange, and also we don't socialize like this in my country. Would it be a circle of empathy if my friend has a problem and she wants to talk to me for 3 hours and I just have to reflect and my turn never comes because she's in a difficulty and she just wants to talk and to air her concerns? Will this, no. Okay, but this is the case.
I don't see it as that way, because it's not give and take. You're not getting it.
Okay, so exactly, this is the thing. What if we have someone who just who is not willing to take anything back? I'm just here just for you. I don't want you to listen to me. I'm just here for you, and I'm gonna reflect back to you. Don't care about me. I'm here just for you.
That might be more like an emergency empathy or an empathy buddy sort of a structure.
Or you're just applying the skills you've learned in your life. That's, to me, when I practice it personally with other, when I'm being empathic, and maybe it's not give and take. It's maybe I may be doing more of the listening. That's just a way I am applying the skills I've learned in the empathy circle in my everyday life. It's not an empathy circle. I'm just being empathic with other people.
I understand.
That's my view.
Mm-hmm. I understand, but so the cultural element is a kind of problem for me.
Okay. One thing we haven't heard from Jessica. Would you be willing to share a bit?
Well, I was with you guys when we tried to create this definition, so no, I don't have anything to add, I guess.
Well, I'll say a few things that I know. For me, the way I have to talk about it with people is I have to say reflective listening, because they don't get empathy at all, and so it's a process of reflective listening, and the outcome is connection. Kind of empathy is part of that, and because empathy can be kind of loaded sometimes, and people just don't understand it. So I found that reflective listening works a lot better.
Can I ask something, Agreed? When you say that they don't understand it, I mean, they don't understand the meaning of the word? They don't understand how this might work? Okay, so this is a word that the people don't really use?
No, I think it means so many things to different people that they don't really know what I'm talking about. But then if I say reflective listening, it's kind of like, oh, I get that. They kind of know what that is more. So I think it's more, it isn't as clear.
All right.
So let's go ahead, Edwin. Let's go. We're going to go to the next section. So we just talked about kind of what is an empathy circle, and now we're going to talk about, well, why participate in one? And once again, the value of this is if you're a facilitator, it helps to know a little bit about what the benefits are. And these were what we have written up on the screen. Those were 3 that we felt were pretty top reasons to benefit, but of course there's numerous benefits, and we couldn't list them all. Those were just some that we identified, the main ones. And so we're curious, why do you participate? Why do you keep coming back here on Monday? What do you get out of it? So we want to have just a short discussion on that.
Can I start?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it really struck me the idea that the circles of empathy was something like a baby, and we had to organize things and discuss the details and talk about the drawbacks. So, I mean, that was something so fascinating for me. I really like the process. And also, I can say that practicing empathic listening was very good for me as a person. I just developed a different practice, a different strategy, let's say. And many times I can see when I'm about to explode, when I hear crazy things, I just say, okay, calm down, and just let the other person finish. And just, okay, so this has really helped me. And I also I believe that this baby can be a very how can I say, very successful adult. And I see, I mean, Ingrid, you weren't with us the previous Monday, but I told them, I don't know if I mentioned this 2 Mondays ago, again, that whenever I watch CNN, I mean, that's amazing. I hear people using the word empathy. I mean, did you see that? Has any one of you noticed that? I mean, whenever they talk about this crisis, about the wall and the government shutdown and all this, they say you have to show empathy. I said, what? Empathy is all over the place, and I'm very, very happy because I want the societies to work, I mean, to operate a little better and be more caring. I mean, I like it. So I can also see the potential this baby has. So these are the reasons I'm here every Monday.
Anyone else?
Sure, I can go. For me, it's definitely practicing empathy. And it's, I guess it's also practicing the intention of empathy, because the more I show up in a structured environment, the more I'll be reminded to do it in my own environment. So I think having a regular meeting in a structured dialogue like that does help. Also, for the first reason, it feels very good. And to feel part of a community as well, I think it's important to not feel alone in that. So that's why I think I show up and I get a lot out of it. A lot of deeper understanding about listening, and a bit like Mimi, I can transfer that in my coaching practice and in my facilitation, in my other kind of facilitation workshops. So yeah, that is there is a huge list, and the main one is really the practice of empathy for me.
Nancy and Edwin?
I'll go, and I would just echo what Jessica just said, the practice. You know, I'm learning something. I'm learning a new skill, and this is my best opportunity for practicing it. So so that definitely gets me coming back. And the other, excuse me, the other piece of it is, I was just thinking about, it's Monday, and Mondays used to have a major connotation of all these meetings and, you know, trying to manage all the issues and things that were going on, and it was usually stressful and busy and all of that. And it was always about other things. It was about projects. It was about other personnel issues or, whatever it was. This is personal. This particular thing is personal. We talk about personal feelings, personal thoughts, personal experiences. And so there is a connection, I think, that occurs during this empathy circle, during this meeting. And that's probably the second major thing that gets me coming back or has me wanting to come back.
Okay. For me, the empathy circle, the main thing is that it's a gateway for learning, deepening empathy skills, and there's a huge amount of benefits, for the value of empathy. So it's I think it was kind of mentioned there already. So that's one of them. And we do a lot of these empathy circles with the political bridging divides, social divides. And I just enjoy the effectiveness of having people who have different opinions, different sides, who would normally kind of battle it out and not feel heard, that they can actually feel heard. So it's that quality of the benefit of, for myself, being heard, feeling, hey, I don't have to fight to be heard, as well as hearing others and supporting others to hear each other. So it's a good feeling. So there's a whole cornucopia of benefits that I've heard from a lot of people. So.
And I've noticed that it's different for, like, in our group, it's, I know both Nancy and Jessica, Mimi may have said this too, was practice. That was why. And that's mine too, is to practice. But then when I think of the political divide, I don't know if any of them would list practice as one of the main reasons they come. Because I think they're there for just to be heard, or maybe to understand a different viewpoint. So there's like different reasons why different people participate, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
So
wide variety.
You mean that people who just join and they have this empathic listening, they do it because they would like to air their views?
Yeah, in the ones Edwin does with the political divide every Saturday, those. Mm-hmm. That's
a very good point.
Yeah, they're not there for, I don't think, for practicing. They might be, but it's mainly, I think, just to air their views and possibly, to understand someone else's too.
Edwin, okay, Ingrid, thank you.
Okay.
That was a very good point. I hadn't thought about it. But Edwin, what is the feeling you get when these sessions end every Saturday? Do you feel that these people have come closer? Do you feel that they do it because they want to communicate their ideas? I mean, what is their motive?
One of them is, what is the motive? Is there's a desire to actually hear other points of view, because there's a feeling to it, right? When you hear other points of view and you can do it in a constructive way, it actually feels kind of good, right? Because you kind of like grow, you have a sense of growing, seeing things from a different point of view. For example, I did an empathy circle once in Berkeley, and it was a Berkeley liberal who said, she came to the empathy tent and said, I never talk to conservatives. I'm in my little bubble here. I just wonder what they think. I just don't know what they think. And there happened to be a conservative there, and we did an empathy circle together, and they were able to hear each other on very different topics, see the same topic from different points of view. And at the end, they gave each other a big hug, for having a sense of connection. So there was that experience of learning something new, seeing things from a different perspective, as well as the quality of connection with others, which all those things feel good.
So it's just, so they join because they feel good themselves after that.
That and curiosity, maybe. I think being curious about others.
But okay, if this is the case, then, I mean, if you are a Democrat, I don't know what's the difference between a Democrat and a liberal, but let's say that I think that the wall, for example, is a very good idea, and you think that it's not a very good, I mean, okay, there are some people who think that the wall is a good idea, some others believe the opposite, and you believe that you are a Democrat and I'm a Republican. Why should we have? I mean, why should I talk with you so as to see what you believe? I mean, I know that you believe that the wall is not a good idea, and I believe that it's good. I mean, why should I run a circle of empathy to understand more about your views? I know your views, and I don't agree with them.
Well, people know each other's views at sort of a superficial level. And with an empathy circle, you kind of get behind the superficial surface and you get down deeper to the roots. And when you start getting to the roots of something, you sort of change your perspective. And the journey itself is fun. You know, the journey is connecting, it's engaging, it can be energizing. Plus, you kind of develop a sense of connection with other people too. So there's a wide variety of sort of feelings that come up.
I think that's a lot of it. It humanizes the other person instead of thinking them as the enemy.
Okay, this makes sense.
Because that's what happens here a lot. You hear him say after the empathy circle or even anything like that, it's not like they're not a bad person. We just disagree. Whereas before it was like they were a bad person.
Okay. How do you know that? Ingrid, have you seen this take place?
Yeah. I just the other day on, it wasn't an empathy circle, but it was something very similar to an empathy circle. And that's exactly what they say, but it's the same concept. To me, that's what the empathy circle does. It fosters some connection for you to see them as a person and to see that they're not all bad, you know.
So that was an event you attended?
It was on TV.
Oh.
They had the like people from the right and the left together, but I can't even remember what it was on.
Okay, now this makes sense. Okay, I understand. Okay, that's a very good point as well. Thank you.
Okay, so let's, Edwin, let's go next to how does the empathy circle work? So once again, we'll just kind of go through part of this. So participants, one of the beauties of it is that anyone can participate. There's no prerequisites or no requirements. When we're talking about the empathy circle, kind of like what we're doing today, 4 are ideal, but it can really work with 2 or up to 20. And I'm going to give an example, like with 2. One time, Nancy and I went on a hike, and we did an empathy circle with just the 2 of us. But why I say that, it's like one's the speaker, one's the reflective listener. And, you know, you just go back and forth. So we were using the process to kind of hold a mini empathy circle with just us. And when Edwin does those political divides, he can have more than 20 people there. And that he's calling those more empathy cafes instead of empathy circles, because it's a bunch of circles. And so anyway, you can have a lot of different number of people can participate. You can do it online or in person. Topics are wide open. You can pick whatever topic you want, or you don't have to have a topic. Just let people talk about whatever they want to. And then the last 2 things I have slides for, so I'm not going to talk very much about them right here, but we're going to talk about the roles and the process on the next slide. So they're very flexible. You can go ahead, Edwin. So some of you might be surprised to see how many potential roles there are. And the reason there's so many on here is because of Edwin doing those political divide when there's 20 or more people. Because he's found out when there's 20 or more people, he can't do it all, and he has to have help. And so this first person here, the producer organizer, they really only come involved when like Edwin's doing a big empathy circle online. and they're kind of doing all the, sending the emails out, making sure everyone knows what's going on, and then maybe they're also doing the technology part of the online. And there could even be more than one person doing that role. And so then another role is the main facilitator, and and that's usually been Edwin in ours. And then in these big groups that he does, again, often he has to have a co-facilitator. And not only for, sometimes he'll have a co-facilitator for even maybe a group of 7 or 8 if he needs someone to take care of time or something like that. But with these bigger groups, he needs that help because he likes, when he breaks a big group into small groups, he likes to have each small group have a facilitator. So then we get down to the speaker and the reflective listener are the biggest roles. That's why we're there. And then we have the silent observer. So a question we'd like to talk about now, and you can talk about something else if you have a question about what I just said, is, well, what role do you enjoy most and what role do you enjoy least, or any question you have about roles or something you want to talk about.
So I'm wondering about the co-facilitator, because I don't really have a clear picture of what the co-facilitator does. I mean, the first clue I got was when you mentioned something about time, but I'm just wondering what else does a co-facilitator do?
I'll let Edwin talk about that.
So part of the co-facilitator is sort of be moral support, or just a support person. Especially sometimes we do bring in 2 people from the left, 2 people on the right, and it can be more contentious, and it has the potential of kind of blowing up, the sides just really going at each other. So the facilitator, to have a co-facilitator, is someone to support with the grounding in case things do blow up, get really intense. So it's just helpful to have that extra person there. In the circles that we've done, the co-facilitator has done some of the stuff like keep time, so the facilitator can just focus, on the other, or, take notes about what's happening. And so it's been, for the most part, the co-facilitators, and they can also be a learning too. This can be a learning experience for them to be learning how to facilitate as well. So it's kind of like multiple, things that a co-facilitator like that does.
So when you're going to have when you have a co-facilitator, do you and the co-facilitator speak ahead of time and talk about kind of who's going to do what and what your style together will be?
Yeah, so far with the co-facilitator has been more of a passive role. Like I was saying, just doing the timekeeping, maybe some note taking, and that is part of the structure. Beforehand we might talk about what we're going to be doing, but it's, there has been times I've had when we've done, really difficult circles, and with like once I did it where there was it was intense at the empathy tent, and it was kind of getting really intense, and then Lou was there as a co-facilitator, and he stepped in, sort of started taking over. To kind of because I was getting kind of stressed by what was happening. So it's just sort of that sort of support like that. And then beforehand, you can talk and sort of debrief, and having that empathic listening with each other before and after is also supportive, for your own grounding as facilitators.
Yeah, I find myself as well, I did one time a facilitation, and Elisa was co-facilitating, and we decided together what co-facilitation would look like. So I wanted something less passive so that she can really jump in, and if she felt that was maybe something that needed to be readjusted, she would just jump in as well. We would have very a facilitation together. I would be more like the MC and then saying, opening and closing. But we would both have the same role in terms of during the empathy circle. But I think this is because we liked it that way. And yeah, I just wanted to add to that, to your question, and see that I think the co-facilitation can be a co-creative role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did I help?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I can't help but compare it a little bit to mediation, when we have two mediators and co-mediation, and how we decide we're going to manage the process, and who's going to speak and who's not, and so we try to kind of make a plan before we go in, and sometimes it goes well because you're very compatible, and other times it doesn't go as well because you're not compatible, and so yeah, I think it helps to sort of at least establish some basic understandings between the two facilitators or mediators, whatever you've got. But that helps me a lot, because I have had some question and just not quite sure what the co-facilitator did. But I can certainly see it in a large group where you'd want to have the ability to either split the groups or have somebody take some of the pressure off of the main facilitator.
I love that you're saying that, Nancy, because actually I had a question about the 20 participants and more. I was very surprised to see that we could have 20 participants or more, and I wanted some clarification around that, because first, does it, when we say 20 or more, does it mean that it's just to invite people in and then we break out into smaller groups?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
Is that what it means?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if that's what it means, then my next question then is, if we need a facilitator for each group, if you have 20 people, you're going to need a lot of co-facilitator and facilitators. So I don't see how it works to say it's for a group of 20 people or more. I'm a bit confused about how that would work if you only had 2 people.
Yeah, you would, with the empathy circles that we've done online, we've had people who have taken part in previous circles. So they had some experience, so we'd make sure that one person with the experience was in each circle to just keep it on track. So they sort of became as facilitators of their own circle, just to keep the process going. So it's good to have, what I've seen happen is, once I've divided people into groups, said, here's the instructions for how to do it. And then the dialogues, it just turns into people forget the process and they just start talking. I think you might have had that experience too. I don't know, but so it's really helpful to have someone who has had experience that can keep people on track. And so they are, and we've, like I was saying, we've been building up those online circles and then just bringing in people who have some experience. They haven't been trained or anything. They just had some experience. So they know how it works.
Okay,
I think the thing
clarified. Yeah.
I think the thing that Jessica highlights for me is that the training might be a little misleading when we talk about there being up to 20 people in a circle, because the vision I have then is 20 people are sitting there and only 2 people are participating. So I don't know, it might take just a minor clarification to make it clear that while 20 people may come for a topic, the circles they're broken up into smaller, more effective, functional, whatever, smaller circles.
Yeah.
We have that in the write-up. It just didn't get in the presentation.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I probably have seen it.
I'm just going to do, it's 2:15 right now, and I know not everyone has gotten to talk about the roles. I would like to go to the next, if you have what I'm going to propose, but if someone really wants to talk about the role right now, we can. But I would like to go and talk about the process and then do our normal empathy circle, and then you could bring up the role thing that you wanted to talk about at that point. Does that work for everyone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because of the time, sure.
For the other group, for the rest too. So if you have a question about the rule or a comment, just write it down and then we'll get to it in just a little bit. So there is a structured process that should be followed during the empathy circle. And we have if you can click on that link, Edwin, hopefully it's still good. Though that's not the right link. There. So you don't need to read this all right now. It's just letting you know as a facilitator that we have written it down, kind of a step-by-step, and that, the first step is a participant volunteers to be the speaker. And then when you're facilitating your groups, if the first time you're going, you could take this and copy it and give it to them if they wanted something. I know when I've done empathy circles in my home, they wanted to see something written. So this process is written down and documented if you need it as a reference. So let's go back to that other slide.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Down two, I think.
Roles.
There we go.
Okay.
Oops. So then you have to go back up. So Edwin, I would like you to, I know I have seen, I would like you to start with why to you is it important to follow this process?
There's a basic process, and I think it's important to follow it, because if people start just talking out of turn, that the whole process really falls apart, because then we turn into just normal discussion. Whoever's the most aggressive or whatever can just kind of take over. So and especially in a conflict situation, it creates a sense of fairness, because it's like, oh, I want my fair turn to speak, my fair time to speak, and I don't want the other person just doing all the talking. So if people start speaking out of turn, then everybody else says, oh, this structure is not there anymore, so I just have to kind of break in and talk to be heard, and kind of turns into a competitive, it can turn, it's not that it will, but it can turn into a very competitive discussion or debate, instead of staying within the empathic listening process. And it's really that empathic listening process that is what makes it so effective, is that everyone's going to have their turn, everyone's going to be heard to their satisfaction, that when they have the floor, it's their time, and that it creates a sense of fairness and equality, I think, for everyone.
Okay. And does, I think I've shared with you all the time when Edwin and I were out doing empathy circle with Ball State, and one of the guys, he wanted out of it. He couldn't stand it. It drove him crazy. And he asked, can we break it? Can we break the structure? And I was really curious to see what Edwin was going to do, because to me this is one reason we're talking about this now, because as a facilitator, you at times are going to have people who want to break the structure. And then it's like, well, what do you do? How do you handle that situation? And what Edwin did in that situation is he just reflected back to the guy what he said. He just reflected back, I can tell you really want to break the structure. And so the circle kept going. The guy didn't get much relief for his anxiety about wanting to break it. But so it was kind of it was just interesting to think about what would you do in that situation. So
something. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I just didn't get, why was the person anxious? Something he heard something, or he was uncomfortable with the process?
It seemed he had what I think was really happening with him is he thought he was an empathic person, but he realized that he wasn't, because he saw empathy as identifying, oh, I've had that similar experience, or patting someone kindly or hugging them. But then when he saw the reflective listening, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do the reflective listening was very hard for him to do. And I think he had a lot of conflicts inside because of that. Because then he said afterwards, I've just realized I've always thought I was an empathic person, and I'm realized I'm not.
One of the problems is he was trying to take notes of everything the person was saying, and that note-taking was kind of distracting him from kind of being present. And then when he had to shift back to reflect back, he was kind of struggling.
Okay, I see.
So does anyone else want to share like if you've ever had frustrations with the process, or if there's anything that you really want to share right now about the process?
What I have seen is that people find it hard to stay focused and reflect. Oh, they say, I can't remember. Oh, I have memory loss. Oh, I can't do this. And then I have to just say, oh, I think that you can. What if we try a little bit? And then, I just motivate them to keep trying, and then they see that they can make it. Or if I see that because of the anxiety, the information cannot be retained in their memory for a long time, I might just ask the other person to stop sooner. Or I might stop sooner. So I will make it easier for the listener to reflect. But I also have noticed that it is when they try to reflect is the moment they realize that they are very bad listeners. I mean, what's that? I mean, the realization, how awful am I in my life? I mean, I can see this cloud above the head. Gosh, I've never listened to anybody, because that's the truth. Most of the people never listen. They pretend. But so these are the things I've seen, and I try to manage the difficulties, keep smiling, and just motivate them in a mild way.
Okay.
I love what Mimi's saying, because I'm realizing, and I don't know if this is part of the process or if this is clear, that at first I thought that it was a really free fall for the speaker. And I think the process needs to be clearer, maybe, or maybe it's me who's not clear enough about it. But the first people who are doing it, I noticed, like Mimi was saying, like they so happy to have an occasion to speak, they speak, and the listener is just getting like overwhelmed. And as a facilitator, I usually jump in and I realize maybe it needs to come more it needs to come before the clarification that as the speaker, speak in a couple of 3 sentences maximum, so that the listener can reflect back. So the process is more equal that way in terms of the back and forth, because it happens a couple of times in my circles where, as a facilitator, people didn't understand that. Actually, there's 2 things. That first, the speaker doesn't have to just talk for like 3 minutes, and then the listener's turn. And the second level was, it was not just in one chunk. That it is actually the process, the structure. It's a back and forth. The structure is not in I speak for 3 minutes and I reflect for 3 minutes. Like it's actually a discussion, and I don't think in the circles it's clear enough. That's been my experience so far.
Okay. So, oops. I've kind of lost you guys. Oh, there we are. So, Edwin, let's go ahead and if we want to talk more about the process, we can do it when we're doing the listening or our rounds. So let's go back to the presentation quick, just to see what's there. Okay. So we're going to do our empathic listening rounds now, and we'll do 5 minutes per speaker and the reflective listener. And the topic of the first round is you can really do whatever you want. I mean, you can talk about anything that you want to right now, but just as a topic to help guide the discussion, what questions do you have about empathy circles? And
I can keep time.
if someone wants to go first. I'm not
sure I understand the question. What questions have about the empathy circles?
So I'll start then. I have a question. So a question I have about empathy circles is that...
And who are you speaking to?
Oh, I'll speak to Nancy. Is that it's so wide how they can be used, that it's almost hard to do a training that can meet the needs of all those different groups.
So the topics and the purposes of empathy circles are really just so broad that using one training to try and meet the needs of all those different types of circles is difficult.
Right. And that we have to kind of try to keep it pretty general. So we either have to keep it pretty general so it can meet all those needs, or state up front, this isn't going to meet your need if you're doing empathy circles for this purpose.
So maybe some clarification up front about the idea that, this is a very generalized training to meet a lot of different needs, but it may not meet the needs for one exact or specific type of empathy circle. It's not going to meet the needs of everybody.
Right.
All the time.
I feel fully heard.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll speak to Jessica. Related to a question that I would have. So it's not really a question. You didn't have a question so much as a concern, Ingrid. So,
yeah.
So I guess I could go either way, because I'm not. I had a question about the co-facilitator role, but I think that was answered very well, and I understand that. So, more related to a concern about the empathy circle, and this just illustrates my lack of experience, but I think about having 20 people show up to an empathy tent, and I'd be scared to death.
Okay, so first you were talking about you appreciate the clarification about the co-facilitator role, and then you are expressing some anxiety about wow, if we can go up to 20 people and they would all show up at the same time. That's not something that sounds joyful and exciting to you.
Right. It sounds very stressful, especially if it's about a topic that I'm either not totally immersed into, or educated about, or experienced with, like politics.
So it sounds like, I think I'm hearing two things here. Like it would be extremely stressful for you to have to handle as a facilitator so many people at once, and then you have your concern about what if the topic is not something I can really fully understand or really fully even maybe enjoy about it, or I don't have any background on it, and so I'm sensing a lot of fear.
Yes, certainly a lot of fear when it comes to something like a political empathy tent with like 20 people.
Yeah, that's
very specific.
Yeah, it's very specific. Yeah, it's really like empathy tent, political context, 20 people. No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Thanks. I feel fully heard.
Thank you, Nan. I'll speak to Mimi. That's very interesting because it's very related to what Nancy is saying, because my business partner and I had last year workshop with leaders, a nonviolent communication workshop, and we wanted to do an empathy circle, and we had 22 people, and we talked for so many hours about how we can make it work, and then we couldn't because we felt divided by 10 or 11 people each would still feel overwhelming. So we decided not to do it in the end, and I was very sad about that.
Okay, I'm not sure I understood something. You said that there were 10 people, and what was the problem with the 10 people? They understood empathy.
10 people. Yeah, it's so last year we were supposed to do a workshop with 22 people.
All right.
And we were trying to figure out, we wanted to do an empathy circle with those 22 people, and we couldn't figuring out a way to separate them. And one way was divided in 2 groups of 11 people, but it still felt this is too much for one person to handle 10 people who never had done empathy circle before. So we decided not to do it in the end. And I was sad and a big surprise for me, and still don't know how we can manage 20 people without having a lot of facilitator or experienced people.
I see. So what I hear, what I feel is that you are very concerned and kind of sad because last year you wanted to run with your partner a circle of empathy as part of a workshop. You wanted to organize with some other managers, 22 people. Leaders. Okay, there were 22 people, and you spent hours trying to come up with the best way you could just divide these people, group these people, so as to have this circle of empathy. And no matter how hard you tried with your partner, you finally couldn't find the best way in order for the circle of empathy to be organized without the contribution of many facilitators or experienced people, because none of the audience had ever tried to participate in a circle of empathy, so they had no previous knowledge or experience. And it seems that you wish that things were different and you could have this opportunity.
Wish were different, or that we could have been able to find a solution to that problem. And because our excitement is a bit like Edwin thinking it's empathy circle is a gateway to an empathy training for more. It's really on a superficial level. I really wanted managers and leaders to experience empathy circle so that they can take that and do that with their own teams. Instead of having boring work meetings, they could do empathy circles. And we were so excited about this idea, and not being able to implement that in our workshop was very frustrating.
Okay. What I hear is that you have been really, really disappointed by the fact that you couldn't come up with a solution, because it wasn't that you wanted to run a fancy workshop. You wanted people to practice, to participate in the circle of empathy in order for them to learn, to be introduced and learn how to practice circles of empathy in their own workshops, in their own business. So instead of offering boring instead of having boring meetings with their colleagues, they could do something meaningful. And you feel that, that was a missed opportunity.
A huge missed opportunity, yeah. That's well said, yeah. Thank you. I feel heard, Mimi.
Okay, thank you too. All right, so I can just I can talk to Edwin. And I can say that what I'm going to say is relevant and irrelevant at the same time. But once I have been meeting you for all these months, I want to say that as a person, I'm really annoyed when somebody offers me something in order to take something back. I think that I'm more into unconditional love and unconditional empathy, in the sense that I do something for you, period. Now, if you want to return this back to me as a person, that's up to you. I mean, if I care about someone, I care. And my project is to just keep the person satisfied. Now, if the person wants to reciprocate, that's a different story. So whenever I have to do things, and I do something in order for me to take something back, it is as if a bad flavor, a bad taste, a bad additive is added to my food, to my meal. It's not so good as I want it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm hearing there is that when you like to give something to someone, so like an unconditional love, that you just give it and you're not expecting something in return. And when there's a sort of a feeling of reciprocity, or I'll give you something, you give me something, that creates a flavor, a feeling that's unpleasant to you. And so you're just kind of contrasting those two different experiences. That just giving kind of feels open and feels good, and that other one just that feels like it doesn't taste good.
Yes, and I feel that when somebody is generous and is a real and authentic giver, I mean, the universe, or God, if you will take care of the person. I mean, I don't need to just keep a note with what are the things that I have to take back, because in that case, I did these good things. I just want to do my best. Now, if you appreciate it, good. If you don't appreciate it, it's good as well. I mean, I might be a little disappointed, but I'm gonna find my way. So I'm saying this because I would like to have a little warmer kind of empathy circle, just something that could be more culturally compatible in my country, compatible to how people socialize in my country, because the cultural element is important.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying the cultural element is important to you, and you would like something in the empathy circle that has a warm, more of a feeling of warmth to it. And when there's sort of a tit for tat, or I don't know if that's related to the empathy circle, but if there's sort of a give and take aspect, that you don't like that feeling, and for you just want to be able to give, and that if there's any accounting, God will do the accounting, sort of. I don't know if that was...
No, actually, no, God is not an accountant. That's a good...
I misunderstood.
Nobody. I mean, there's no
accounting.
No, that's amazing. We are caring people, and I mean, yes. Is there anything more than this? I don't want to do it in order to get something back. This is a very, very important thing about me. I'm not saying that's to tell you that I'm a good person or something, but I'm saying this in the same sense as if my hair is dark. I mean, that's it. It's not blonde, it's dark. And this is who I am and how I understand things in my life.
Mm-hmm. So you're just saying this is how you understand things in your life, and this is the way that you are, that you just want to have sort of this unconditional caring for people, and that you like that feeling, and that sort of that open-heartedness towards people.
And the last thing I want to mention is that, I forget this word. How do we call this? A boiling pot is it steaming pot, where the steam is blocked inside the, I don't remember the word. I mean, Can you
Pressure?
girls help?
Pressure cooker?
Pressure cooker, right. I mean, okay, this is the feeling I get, that when we just have this circle of empathy and I say and you reflect and vice versa, I think that this theme cannot escape the pot. And I'm wondering, this is my question. I have this question since the first time we met. What happens when we try to discuss issues that are edgy, issues that are difficult? I'm not just trying to reflect on neutral issues. Yeah, okay, this happened to me, but the listener is not involved into this. What if the listener is involved? What if I'm talking to my husband, to my mother, and the other person is the reason of my sadness? How do I manage it? Because I can see this question coming from the participants in the circle of empathy that I'm going to organize. And this is a very, very crucial question for me, absolutely meaningful. And I haven't come up with an answer yet.
So there's a question you have that's like really crucial for you and you haven't come up with the answer to it yet, is how do you handle really difficult, contentious, like family issues where things really matter to the participants, where it's not just sort of not so deep, but that there's really deep emotions, and how do you kind of handle that and you're not sure?
Yes, I mean, not just the deep emotions, but the other person. I'm angry with you, and we are friends, or we're business partners. I'm angry with you, and we have to practice empathic listening. How do we do this?
Yeah, it's like when I'm really angry with you, how do we deal with an empathy circle when I'm really angry with you and really upset with you and just want to punch you in the face?
I mean, not that hard, but kind of. Okay.
They're not quite punch you in the face, but shake my fists at you.
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. I'll speak to Ingrid then. So the first thing is in terms of the conflicts, the empathy circle, I think it works really well in conflict. In fact, when there's conflict, it adds a little bit of dynamics to it. It creates energy, and I think the container can hold the energy.
So from your perspective, that empathy circle is a great tool to use with conflicts, and that it's a container that can hold it. It can hold all the energy that comes with a conflict.
Yeah, it's and I've seen it, in the political divides. There's a lot of conflict there, and people are upset. And somebody says something, you can see someone else in the group just getting, irritated, and just really wanting to speak. And it's their turn to speak, and they're a bit heated, and so that's what I really like about the political divides, because there is those conflicts there, and that adds energy.
So it's like, not only do you believe this, you know it. You have seen it in action in the political divides, that heated debate, contentious with the people, and you've been able to see it work.
Yeah, as well as family conflicts where family members are screaming and yelling at each other, and it looks like things are going to blow up, and we bring in the empathic listening, and it takes time, and it's painful, but things can get worked out if you can hold the process.
So not only with strangers that you've seen it work with political divide, people who don't know each other, you've seen it work with families too, that it really can help solve contentious issues.
Yeah, I know it's something that Mimi, when there's a reflection where you reflect somebody, what they're saying, and then there's reflecting, but sort of being them and just saying it as they said it. And I said that a little bit with Mimi at the end, and I noticed she seemed to like that, where I actually kind of said it as her, being her, saying it to someone else. And I've seen Carl Rogers do that too. So there's a little shift being where you just sort of take on the person and you speak as if you are them, instead of saying, I hear you say. It's kind of like, I'm sort of being them. So I just sort of noticed that little wow. difference, and I think there's more energy to kind of taking on the role and reflecting in the role.
So you've noticed something when you've been listening, and you just noticed it here today too, that when you reflected back to Mimi, you reflected back using the same way that she said it. And you noticed that she connected with that.
Yeah.
She really heard that connection. And that you've noticed Carl Rogers has done the same thing before too.
Yeah, and then kind of going back to the sort of the empathy cafe structure that Jessica and Nancy and I think you're talking about is that's a whole different situation. The main issue there is, can you have one person facilitate each circle? So I think that is, and how do you get those people? And so it does really help to have, if there's 4 or 5 people to a table, that one of those people has experience in the process and can kind of hold the process. So I think that really helps. So that's a whole, how to hold an empathy cafe is a whole thing of itself too, an added issue for facilitation.
So you wanted to say something more about what Nancy and Jessica had some questions about, which was related to the co-facilitation. And you said that you've seen where having the co-facilitate, it is important to have a co-facilitator in those smaller, if you have an empathy cafe with lots of people and you go into small breakout groups, that it is important to have that co-facilitator there, or someone who has had some prior experience to keep them kind of focused with the process.
Yeah. And the way to build that up is to have, we've had empathy cafes and real cafes, and we have groups, and then people have had the experience having already done it, so bringing them into the different circles, and that's how we're doing with the political ones. Enough people have now experienced it. There's always enough people to have at least one person in a circle that has that experience. So does seem to be an important part.
So the way you've kind of solved that problem is just finding people who have some experience with it, and then asking them to be the co-facilitator, and that works.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. So a couple things. I heard Mimi when she said she wants warmer empathy circles. And I agree with that 100%. And, who am I talking to? I'll talk to Mimi. Okay? Are you ready?
Yes, sure, but I didn't hear one of the things you said.
I'll start over.
Again? Yes.
So I heard your comment when you said you wanted warmer empathy circles. And I remember Edwin said a few times ago, maybe our last session or 2 sessions ago, he made a comment that some people in the political divide were wanting to go deeper into have deeper meaning. And I know one reason when I think about, so I'm curious, what can we do to make the empathy circle warmer? Is it, because I know sometimes it's, if you talk about personal things, for example, the empathy circles I do here with my friends, they feel warm because we're talking about personal stuff. And so those feel deeper, I get more of a sense of satisfaction out of them. I'll stop there.
Okay, so I hear that you resonated with my call for warmer empathy circles, and this reminded you of the need some participants expressed on Saturdays in this political divide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, political divide sessions, and they felt the need to dig deeper and find some more meaning, and you are really wondering excuse me, about how we could have this kind, how we could design, how could we could practice these warmer circles of empathy. And you also mentioned the experience you have with your friends at home, especially when you talk about more personal issues. Once you know them, and the issues, of course, are more personal, you feel your heart warmer. You feel that the connection is stronger with them. And you're wondering how we can make it happen in our sessions as well.
Right. Yes, I'm curious about different ideas to make it warmer. And besides maybe making it personal, because I don't really want, I'm not going to talk about things personal on here when it's videotaped and put on the internet. I'm not going to do that. And so, you know, maybe it is talking about social issues, or I just don't know, you know. So I think I'd like to have that as a topic to discuss sometime in one of our Monday sessions, what we can do to make it warmer.
Mm-hmm. So you confirm that. I mean, you said again that you're very concerned and curious about how we could, or interested in how we can make these our sessions warmer. And given the fact that our sessions on Mondays are being recorded, and this means that you're not willing to open up too much and talk about personal issues once you know that this video might be online and other people will have access to the content. Of course, I mean, that's the reason why it wouldn't be uploaded. And so you think that would be a good topic for us to discuss in one of our next Monday sessions.
Yes, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you too. Okay, I can talk to Nancy. And first of all, I would like to say something I said the previous Monday about Nancy to Nancy. That once Nancy is, I mean, I think that it's not very much expressive. Sometimes I was wondering about what you were feeling, and sometimes I took it as something negative. Oh gosh, she's annoyed, or I don't know what is going in this lady. But when I have these positive comments, I said, oh, okay, so Nancy feels satisfied. That was a very good thing. I was very relieved, I can admit.
So because you felt previously that I didn't seem to have much expression, you were concerned about whether or not I was feeling heard or understood, and it was kind of a mystery to you what I was feeling and thinking, and so that caused you some consternation. And when I responded to you in a certain way last week or this week, you felt better because you felt like that you think that I am being heard.
Yes, right. And this has to do with my how I understand things and how I understand warmth. So for me, if I don't see something, it does not exist. If I don't see a facial expression that confirms that the person is engaged, then for me the person is disengaged.
So if you don't actually see a particular expression that reflects warmth to you, then you don't feel that the person is engaged, and maybe in this case it was me, and so you don't necessarily feel heard if the person isn't engaged, at least expressively engaged.
Oh, no. I didn't, that was not a comment about you, because every time I definitely got the impression that you paid full attention to what I said, and your reflection was good. I didn't have any problem with that. But I wanted to connect this to what Ingrid said before about warmer sessions. And I think that we have to define warm. warmth means for each one of us. So that's why I said that for me, if I don't see it, it does not exist. If I say something and I just see a face that, okay, yes, I understand. Oh, that's very good. I mean, I feel that the person is absolutely disengaged, doesn't give a damn about me. And probably that's not the reaction I expect.
Mhm. Yes. So you continue to really desire a more warm circle. And your question really is, how do we demonstrate that? How do we define it? What is warmth to each one of us? And what do we need in order to feel, heard, understood, and a more warm and inviting and rewarding circle?
Exactly. And just the last thing I want to mention, once it's almost 12 here, I want to say that we have to start from how we define warmth, and if we're really satisfied from the reflection we receive, not on a verbal from a verbal aspect, but if we feel that the other person really cares. But we are the models. I mean, we have to take this experience from our sessions and communicate it and try to redesign it in our own groups. So it's not that I'm reflecting to Nancy and Nancy might do something that's not proper or whatever. It's just I take my experience with different people and I try to use it in my own circles of empathy, in my place, with my people. So I become more experienced. I don't know if that was clear. Was it?
So what I'm hearing is that you think that we have a responsibility, this circle of ours, we have a responsibility to define and understand some of these things that make the circle more effective, such as what does warmth look like? And we need to understand those and be prepared to describe and explain it to circles that we're involved in outside of this circle. So It's really important to us to figure out what that looks like and be able to describe it to other people.
Yes, excellent. Thank you very much. I feel fully heard.
Okay, thanks.
So hold on a second, Nancy. It's almost 3 o'clock. So I feel that I think both Nancy and Jessica didn't get a chance, and maybe Edwin, or no, maybe you did get 2 times. I don't know. So we can either, if people want to, we can either go ahead and I want to do one more thing before we sign off, but I don't know if people want to continue a little bit more.
So I'm okay with stopping there because I really need to go at 2, but I just have one thing to maybe put on the list of things that we talk about in the future, and I'm a little confused based on some of Mimi's comments on what the purpose of this circle is. So, and I think we're trying to meet 2 purposes, and that's fine. I think maybe it's just time for me to understand it a little bit better, because I know part of it is that we're trying to develop a training for people to lead and participate in empathy circles. And I think that we're doing a really fantastic job of that. But then I also hear that that we want to do empathy as well. We want to go in circles and do empathy, because Mimi's talking about more warmth and defining warmth, and she wants a more warm circle. And in my mind, that's talking about, as you said, Ingrid, more personal things. And so it seems like we have a bit of a dual purpose and a bit of a dual personality, and it's okay if we're doing both. I think we might need to just define or delineate when we're doing which, and that's all I was just going to throw out there, and I don't need that to be reflected, and I'm good for the day.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming today and testing out this first training. And so what I'd like is, before we leave, if everyone can go around and say what was the most meaningful part to you today that we did.
I'll go. Well, I like the overall approach. Like Nancy was just saying, you know, that she feels that it's really going well with the training aspect of it, and I feel really good about it. The structure, you know, going through the overall framework, having our slide deck, talking about the pieces. So I just really appreciate the structure that Ingrid is created and keeps refining. So yeah, I'm just that. Giving that sense of structure is really great.
I can be really fast and just say, I just echo exactly what you just said, Edwin. So I don't need to repeat that because that's exactly how I feel. It's a great training, very helpful to me.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say a bit similar thing. Thank you, Ingrid, for doing that.
Okay, I would like to say that the most important thing is that we talked about warmth, and the last comment is that when it comes to warmth, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily should be personal, because once things are recorded, I'm not willing to do anything personal either, and I think it makes absolute sense.
Okay. I think for me, the most meaningful thing was just trying it, seeing, you know, you think how things are going to go and then just kind of testing it and seeing how it goes. So I appreciate y'all being willing to do it. So I'm not going to be here next Monday. I'm going to be out of town. So I don't know what you want to do next Monday, but
What are the options?
you can talk about warmth.
What the options, yeah. It could be a warmth discussion topic, or yeah.
Oh,
like,
without
what is warmth?
But I'm interested in it.
Yes, you are. So we could, if the other girls agree.
We could what? Sorry.
Talk about warmth in our next session.
Sure.
And then when Ingrid comes back, we would do the last part. There's been 4 parts. We started with 2, 3, we went back to 1, then we would finish with 4th, and we'll have done this series. Oh, and I'm going to stop the recording.